This is the Danger Close podcast, Beyond the Books with me, Jack Carr. Welcome to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Sig Sauer. My guest today is my friend, Leif Babin. So Leif spent 13 years in the United States Navy, 9 of those in the SEAL teams. The most formative years were spent at SEAL Team 3, particularly in the Battle for Ramadi. He's written 2 books, Extreme Ownership and The Dichotomy of Leadership, along with Jocko Willink, and you can find them both at Echelon Front, and you can find Leif at Real Leif Babin on Instagram and Leif Babin on LinkedIn and the other social channels. So if you like the podcast, be sure and leave a 5-star review and rating. And without further ado, Leif Babin. So growing up, did you know you were going to the teams? I know you wanted to go into the military early on, I think, but were your sights set on the SEAL teams from an early age?
Yeah, you know what, Jack? I always wanted to be some kind of a combat leader. That's all I wanted to be. And you know, I've got a brother and 3 sisters, and I was the only one of my siblings to go in the military. But I always knew I wanted to do that. And from the earliest age I can remember, my favorite thing to do was play war out in the woods, and we'd beat each other with sticks and throw spears at each other and shoot each other with BB guns. And I'm sure similar stuff that you did. Yeah. And for me, just from the time I was in my sandbox playing with my G.I. Joe figures and little plastic army men, I wanted to be some kind of a combat leader. I think I was probably in about middle school. When I first kind of heard about the SEAL teams. Yeah. And I had a cousin who was kind of the big brother that my dad never had, who was a Vietnam veteran, Silver Star recipient. A couple of Bronze Stars, Purple Heart. He had his tailbone shot off as an infantry officer in Vietnam, and he'd eventually made it into Special Forces, and had retired as a colonel from Special Forces. So, we heard stories from him, and he's the first guy that I talked to. You would ask him about his Vietnam experience, and so many Vietnam vets, they didn't want to talk about it. He loved Vietnam. He absolutely loved every moment of his combat experience. And I'm sure just like us, there were days that he wished he could trade or do something different for the guys that he lost. But he absolutely loved it. And it was awesome. And it was very intriguing to me. I hear those stories. And so I decided that's what I wanted to do. And I read Rogue Warrior. And, then when Navy SEALs came out, was that 1990 or 1991? Yeah. That drew me to the SEAL teams. And I always kind of loved the water. And I grew up in East Texas. We grew up fishing off the coast of Texas, seeing all the different vessels that came in flagged with different flags from all over the world, and coming in through Galveston and coming into the port of Houston there. And so I got accepted to West Point earlier than Navy. And so I accepted that appointment to West Point, but I decided, I think it was January of my senior year of high school. I got accepted at West Point, and so I went ahead and accepted the appointment. But I really wanted to go into the SEAL teams. That's what I wanted to do. And so, when I finally got accepted, I think in April, to the Naval Academy, and I thought, man, that's I think we were on a fishing trip, my dad and I, at the Galveston jetties, and I was looking at all those ships coming in. I was like, man, I'm going to go with my gut here. I want to be in the Navy. I want to be in the SEAL teams. That's what I want to do. So.
No kidding. So what do? You get called back up West Point. You're like, hey, sorry. And then there's a waiting list and somebody else hops on and off you go to Navy.
Yeah, it was tough because the West Point alumni network in Southeast Texas, the Beaumont area, was
strong,
very strong. And and one of my longtime family friends that was so excited for me to go there. Obviously, it's an amazing school. But he said, hey, we've got West Point's got Dwight D. Eisenhower, and Navy's got Jimmy Carter. Which one do you want?
Oh, it's so tough. They're putting the pressure on.
Yeah, they put a lot of pressure on me, but I had to go with my gut. I wanted to be in the SEAL teams. Yeah. And, I think just the influence of the books that I'd read and really took me that route.
Amazing. Had you gone to visit both West Point and the Naval Academy prior?
Never been to either one of them.
You've never been to either one. Oh, wow. Have you been to, you've been to West Point, obviously, while you were at the Academy. You went up there for games and stuff like that. And so
I have been. I visited. It's beautiful, and I lived in New York City for 6 years. So we spent a bunch of time driving up there. And I've been on campus a few times and shot with the FBI teams at their
nice.
facilities there. But it's a beautiful place. It's amazing. Obviously, it's got incredible history. But just the SEAL teams was the call for me, and that's why I went to Navy.
Have you been up there with Echelon Front or doing a leadership talk to
Jocko's done some stuff with him. I haven't done anything directly, but there's, it's great to know that the books that we've written, like Extreme Ownership, have had impact there. And Jocko's done a couple of different events, I think, with West Point, and had a chance to speak at Navy, and I just haven't been able to coordinate the schedule, to do that.
Okay.
Anytime that we can give back to the next generation of those serving, obviously we want to do that. And
both campuses are amazing. Both West Point, obviously, and Naval Academy, beautiful campuses, incredible histories. Having gone to both just to see them, just to walk, Naval Academy, not a bad spot. But going to West Point, I did after Najaf in 2004. They asked me to come up and give a talk. So I think it was in January of 2005, late January, early February 2005. I went up there and gave a talk in Eisenhower Hall at West Point, talking about special operations integration with conventional forces, that sort of thing. Because Najaf was like this 2-week campaign to retake that city, and it was,
you were on the leading edge of that, Jack. That's
it was crazy. It was pretty crazy. But conventional forces, it was 2-7 Cav, and those guys led the way. And I just went in and asked, hey, here's our capabilities. What can we do for you? How can we help? And being able to go up there and talk in that hall was pretty cool. I mean, it was packed. I remember it was amazing. And the architecture up there, beautiful. But point being, I think it's a great place to be from, because they didn't look that happy, like while they were there. But when you meet someone who's a graduate of that institution, I think looking back on it, it's a good place to be from. Probably Naval Academy has its days as well that you're glad to be from there. But while you're in the thick of it, I don't know. It's an amazing college experience, so unique. And those alumni networks, I think it just sets you up. Anybody that can go to either of those schools or the Merchant Marine Academy or Air Force. I mean, it's just, gosh, I can't think of a better place to go to than a service academy coming out of high school.
It's definitely not always the most fun place to be. That's for sure. We used to joke that, they take away all your God-given rights and give them back to you one by one as privileges, over time, and a little bit like prison camp there. But it was a great experience for me. I was a knucklehead, and still am a knucklehead in many ways. But it was something that helped direct me. I think to give me some direction. Like I needed some discipline. I was just a guy who made it through. I made it through high school. I didn't have to study, or so Navy was tough for me. And frankly, the best thing that ever happened to me coming out of the Naval Academy was the most soul crushing thing. I'd given up that appointment to West Point. I went to Navy to be a SEAL, and we had a prior enlisted SEAL in my class. And so there were 16 bills. So only 15 guys were getting selected to go, for a Naval Special Warfare billet to go to BUD/S. And I was not one of those 15. It was absolutely crushing to me. I mean, it was devastating. Now I was going to go out. And my second choice was Marine ground. So I wanted to go. I was like, all right, at least I can be a Marine infantry officer. I didn't get that. There were so many people that wanted to go, in the Marines. Basically, if you weren't right at the top of the class, if you didn't put Marines first, you didn't get it out of my class. So
no way. What year was that? What year did you graduate?
1998.
Okay.
1998. And so there was one guy I knew of that had put SEALs first and Marines second and got Marines. And he was right at the top of our class, outstanding student. I was not an outstanding student. So, and I had a pretty bad conduct record too, because I got in a lot of trouble.
Oh, really?
For dumb stuff and just being a knucklehead and following orders from, upperclassmen who are 1 year older than you. It was not my greatest strengths, and keeping my mouth shut when I should have. I didn't always do that well. So that didn't help me out. And I went out and spent 3 years in the surface fleet on two different ships. And at the time it was heartbreaking. I mean, this is, I was looking at my friends who got selected to go and we're going through BUD/S, and it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. It was an awesome experience. I got to sail around the world. I was immediately thrown into awesome leadership positions in charge of millions of dollars worth of equipment and 28 people in the, sonar division, torpedomen and sonar techs, as an anti-submarine warfare officer on a destroyer. And it was a great leadership experience for me. It also gave me a massive appreciation, because by the time I actually got selected for a lateral transfer, I mean, I was just so thankful to be there. There was no question that there was no question I was going to make it to that training program, because this was my one shot to do that. And I got picked up on my second lateral transfer package. So it was the last opportunity I had to go.
No kidding. Those ships, where were they stationed? Where were they out of?
San
Out of
Diego.
Okay. So you're out of San Diego. You put in those packages, boom, you go to Buds. And what year is that? What year are you in Buds?
I went through Buds in 2002. So we started
2002.
April.
So you're on deployment. You're in the
graduated,
surface fleet when September 11th happens?
I was on my second ship. We were portside in San Diego, and I was coming in to relieve the duty. You know, I think we were in a 3 or 5 section watch rotation. And so I was coming in early to relieve actually, you know what? I take that back. I was actually on the ship, and a guy that was coming in to relieve me had heard it on the radio. Because we've been up later, something the night before. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. And so he called he called me to let me know what was going on, because we had no idea. And we went and turned the TV on, you know, and watched as the, you know, second plane hit the towers there.
No kidding. So then security, you guys probably had some sort of security protocols in place. I think bases were locked down. I was in Guam at the time, but I remember hearing that back in San Diego that, you know, obviously increased security measures get thrown up all over the place, and gets a little bit tense there for a while when no one knew what was really going on. And then
nobody knew. I mean, it was, you know, are they going to try to fly planes, you know, into downtown Los Angeles? I mean, there was all kinds of just contingency planning, and no one knew a thing. And so we were just basically locked down on the base, and the ship was just standing by, you know, ready to get underway. We never ended up doing that, but we just didn't know what was next. Everyone was just there.
Okay. And then have you already been accepted to Buds at that point? You're waiting to go, or
I got picked up right as, I can't remember if it was either days prior or days after September 11th. I got selected in September of 2001.
Wow.
And I'd have to go back and look at the exact date, but I mean, it was right as 9/11 was happening. So, I mean, the war in Afghanistan was, it kicked off as I was training for Buds, for sure. So, we knew it was real. We knew it was, we were going to a SEAL platoon and going straight overseas to fight.
Man. So you do that. So you go to Buds and you get to your first SEAL team. And what team was the first one?
SEAL Team 5.
You go to 5 first. Okay. Got it. And then you do your AOIC right off the bat?
Yeah. I was the Buds class OIC, because I was a pretty senior guy. I put on a lieutenant in Buds. And so, you know, the deal with that, man, I got lots of attention, and it was awesome. I embraced it. You know, I passed every single, you know, uniform and room inspection. I think all but one. And I still got beaten anyway. It was no big deal, just the way it is. And I accepted that. But because I was senior, they were actually going to send me to SEAL Team 1 first. And I had some good friends that, you know, I know are friends of yours that, as well, that had pulled some strings to get me to 5, so that I could do an assistant platoon commander tour before jumping straight into a platoon commander tours. And, you know, if I'd gone right into OIC without that experience, that would have definitely been a travesty. That would have been tough. So.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, we had my first platoon commander did that, and he was a prior Marine, so he had some ground combat, some tactical experience, not combat, but some ground training anyway. But yeah, that's tough when they take somebody just because of rank and then throw them into that position. So yeah, it's awesome. You get to do your AOIC. For those listening, it's an assistant officer in charge of a platoon. And where did you go on that deployment?
We went to Iraq. So we deployed with SEAL Team 3. So we had kind of a combined element, cut down our workup cycle, you know, to like 11 months. And then we got shoved into the PSD mission.
Yep.
So that was my first deployment was getting that on, going out protecting the top 5 interim Iraqi government officials. You spent some time doing that as well.
I did. Yeah. I got to set that up, which was interesting because we had no training in that sort of thing. So they just said, hey, we got this call. We were up in Mosul at the time, and something came over, you know, some message traffic or whatever, said, hey, pack up and head to Baghdad, because you guys are going to now protect. I think there was somebody before Alawi. There was someone who got blown up that was supposed to be the prime minister. And I think before Alawi,
I think there was 2 different interim government officials that got assassinated.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe it was on the second one. They're like, hey, wait a second. Maybe we should protect these guys. Who's in country? Okay. Some SEALs, they can do things. I saw that movie too, and shot us down there. So we thought that it was going to get canceled. We thought someone was going to come to their senses and be like, wait a sec, do these guys have any training in that? I thought someone would ask that question, you know?
Well, didn't they put the bid? I think they put a bid out to Blackwater for it, right?
Oh, really?
Blackwater,
and that's why we ended up with it?
Like $100 million per per principal. And they're like, nope, SEAL teams do it.
Yeah, we can do this for free. Yeah. So that was crazy going down there. Even on the flight down, I remember guys talking about it like, hey, this is a suicide mission. I mean, guys were like, hey, we're going to stand. These two guys just got blown up. I was remembering one, but yeah, two guys got blown up, I think with VBIDs, with vehicle-borne IEDs. And now we're going to be standing next to these guys as we move forward here. This doesn't look promising. And hey, who has training in this? So no one did. So we had some guys from another East Coast SEAL team come out that had been doing it in Afghanistan to kind of help us set that up. So we had two of those guys there as advisors. And I remember I had one laptop and we had a couple cars out there on loan from either the State Department or the CIA, those Mercedes that were super tricked out, that had like I just remember them being very expensive because one of our guys took it to the gym once and ran into another car. And it was like, it's a big deal when you do that. When you take one of the two like vehicles that's going to be driving a Lowy around and you take it to the gym and hit something. That's not good. But
Jack, we had a very similar experience with that. 'Cause we had relieved you guys in that. And look, it was, you guys set us up for success. And I remember, one of the guys that y'all were working with who set that up with you, who just said, listen, we know people are watching these guys, and all we can do is we know people are trying to kill them. All we can do is have them look at us and say, not today, not today. Yeah. We know, and present that hard target, which is, we just took that to heart. And the SOPs that you guys established, it really, the strength of the SEAL teams to be given a mission like that with zero training whatsoever. And you kept them alive. And then we turned, we kept them alive for 4 months, and we turned it over. Yeah. The next generation, the next SEALs coming in, they kept them alive. But on the vehicle piece, we actually had one of our drivers, driving a big up armor. I think it was a Toyota Land Cruiser. I don't know what that thing cost with the up armor package. It's got to be, it's got to be what, a couple $100,000. Oh yeah. But he slammed it into a Jersey barrier right at the gate going to the Al Rashid Hotel to try to remember it well. Big KBR chow hall there. Oh yeah. And, just totally smashed the whole front end of it. Obviously it was a giant deal, and we were getting yelled and screamed at for it, but it was pretty funny. We went back the next day, and one of the Army guards had written on the Jersey barrier, and this big concrete barrier, it said, Barrier 1, NSW 0. And we were laughing so hard on that.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. I hope someone has a picture of that somewhere, because that's fantastic. I love that guys get creative like that downrange. But yeah, those vehicles were pretty cool, because I remember they had that system in there where if it sensed some sort of biochem weapon, then it like let loose, and it had this pressure system in there where it flooded it with air on board. So it kept those chemicals out just by the pressure, which was pretty cool. Yeah, I think they're pretty pricey. I think those the Mercedes Special Operations Division, those things don't come cheap. It's not just an additional add-on package, that you check for like $2,500. Like it's serious business. But yeah, that was an interesting mission. I mean, it was the only time I did that. So I'm glad. I looking back, none of us wanted to be doing that. We wanted to be kicking doors like we had been doing, but being able to sit down and do that and coordinate with big Army and do a mission that we'd never been either trained for or done, like that was interesting to set that up and then get it up and running and see it go from that one computer and those two cars to what it grew into eventually with a big tactical operations center and all sorts of liaisons and air assets and all the rest of it. Like that was pretty cool. But it was while I was doing that after we got it set up that I got snagged by MARSOC Det 1. Remember those guys? So it was like before the new MARSOC, which I guess are now Raiders, but MARSOC Det 1 was like their first foray into special operations. So they grabbed me for a little bit because one of their guys was coming back to the States to do something else. So I got to jump in with them, and they were fantastic. And then from there, that's when I got to go do Najaf. So that was doing that 2 weeks in Najaf, which was a very formidable time.
Jack, you got pretty much every good deal that you could find.
I stumbled into a few. Like there was a few Forrest Gump moments during my time in uniform, and I'm feel very fortunate that I stumbled into those.
Well, listen, I wasn't. I'm sure you didn't just stumble into it. As we often say, like people make their luck, and I think because you're a great guy and you're a humble guy and you're willing to work hard and adapt to a mission, I'm sure you're the perfect guy for those missions. And there's not, there's a reason you get chosen to do stuff like that. And what's interesting about that too is kind of like getting sent to the surface fleet. For me, what seemed like a bad deal, the PSD mission was not at all what we wanted to be doing, right? We wanted to be doing offensive operations instead of just being on the defensive. And yet to open that opportunity up for you to be a part of an awesome epic battle. I mean, one of the biggest battles in all of the Iraq War. To make a difference there and demonstrate how SEAL snipers could support conventional troops, in that effort. That's outstanding.
Oh, thanks, brother. Yeah, that was looking back, that was definitely a highlight. But I got set up for that success by having a commanding officer who saw me show up after OCS, where for those listening, it was kind of like officer candidate school. I did the same things I did in boot camp. I folded underwear and t-shirts. I just got yelled at by a Marine instead of a Navy person. And then it was right back into the SEAL teams. And he saw me, I came across that quarterdeck and he just sent me back to his former command and off I went to Afghanistan. So right away, and a lot of those guys that were in Afghanistan had been enlisted with me before. And so they already I kind of had like the check in the box from them. And so I got to go see how things operated in Afghanistan and take those lessons back to SEAL Team 2. And so yeah, people definitely looked out for me and set me up for success just by throwing me in the fire. Because once again, zero leadership training up to that point. Like there has been zero leadership training, either in the enlisted side or the officer side, because OCS, not so much a leadership training program, more a folding clothes and saying, yes, sir, type of program. Attention to detail, they call it. So interestingly enough, when you got back from Ramadi, then do you jump right away into the junior officer training course? And I'm jumping ahead here. So I'm going to go back a little bit. So after you come back from that SEAL Team 5 deployment to Iraq, do you go right into your OIC at Team 3 at that point?
I did. My commanding officer at SEAL Team 5, I wanted to take over, the OIC of my platoon,
right.
Just to fleet up from the assistant platoon commander position. And my commanding officer said, nope, you're senior. You need to, deploying 6 months earlier will be to your benefit. You need to go to SEAL Team 3. And I was so furious about that. I was so angry about it. And it was such a great call. And he was an awesome guy. And he clearly understood strategically that was most important. And, had I not done that, I mean, I love my great friends and brothers that were at SEAL Team 5, who actually relieved us in Ramadi. But I never would have gotten to work with Jocko and Charlie Platoon, in Tasking a Bruiser, in the Battle of Ramadi in 2006. And that was, that for me is obviously the pinnacle and highlight of my career and just, tremendously humbled learning those lessons learned. And really what we were doing was building off of the standard operating procedures and that you and your teammates had actually developed. And I think, what was interesting at the time, right? We had SEALs and special operators that were out there just doing their thing, going out, it was conventional troops, Army, Marine Corps, on the counterinsurgency fight, going out in the daytime, engaging with the populace, doing coordinated search operations and patrols, civil affairs type missions and key leader engagements. Then you had, the special operators going out on nighttime raids. And it was interesting how they were completely divergent. Sometimes actually, special operators would show up, destroy an area, cause all kinds of problems, and then leave it to the Marines and Army to clean up. And so, how you demonstrated, in the SEALs that you serve would demonstrate how we can actually directly support, these conventional troops, so that we all win. And that's all we did in Ramadi was realize, look, U.S. forces are going to win in Ramadi and we all win, or U.S. forces lose in Ramadi and we all lose. Everybody's going to lose. It doesn't matter how many operations we did. Doesn't matter how many bad guys we capture or kill. If U.S. forces lose here, we all lose. We were losing when we got there in April 2006. And I know you spent some time there, I think the previous year, right? And
I was there, right? So, yeah, I was there 2005, 2006. And the only reason I didn't see you guys in transition is that I had gone to Baghdad to do this covert action program thing with the agency, which also ended up being a highlight of my time in uniform. So I missed you guys in that transition. And actually, it was such a great experience. It actually ended up being the forming the foundation for my second novel, True Believer, that time that I spent there in Baghdad with the agency, because I was the only SEAL attached to that unit. And which meant that I had hair longer than I do now. The beard, I think I shaved every few days at least, but it was amazing because there was the oversight was so different when I was doing that agency job. And my job was really just to do tactical comms on the battlefield and to deconflict with those different QRFs as we moved through all those different battle spaces around Baghdad to go do what were essentially direct action missions. But there was human side of the house and I was learning all these things. And it was just an incredible time where that was the sole focus. I didn't have to, I wasn't really in a leadership position other than just, my peers to my right and left, essentially, because I wasn't leading anybody. I was just like, hey, tactical comms guy, yes, I was back being enlisted guy again, essentially. And I just learned so much on how that side of the that bureaucracy works in the agency, and then that tiny little sliver, which is the ground branch side of the house, doing what they do. So so that's why I missed you in Ramadi, but my guys had been there, prior, did the turnover with you guys, and then you guys hit the ground running and crushed it.
And you guys set us up for success, man. I mean, as you know, you had an outstanding group there, and it was. I mean, the relationships that had been built, we could have never done anything that we did without that. The established with both on the Iraqi Army side and certainly with the Marines and Army, that were on the ground there, and really, that was just absolutely set us up for success. And we were fortunate enough to have, a new unit come in there, kind of look at that problem and realize, hey, we got to take the city back one neighborhood at a time and start to, I know throughout your deployment there, you guys, we were all kind of waiting on that Fallujah style, just smackdown, to go in there and clear the city, as the Marines had done in Fallujah, in 2004. So, and that didn't come, and so when it was like, hey, we don't want that, then, the Ready First Brigade, the 1st Armored Division that had taken over in May 2006, we've been on the ground for about a month there, came up with a seize, clear, whole build strategy to kind of just slowly take that back one neighborhood at a time, try to, minimize the collateral damage that, some of the things that had happened in Fallujah, and just maybe not as big of an eyesore and not as much in the news was their whole goal. And they did an amazing job of that. We were just honored and proud to support them in that effort, just like, you did in Najaf and other places. And all we did was just carry on the legacy that you guys had started. So it was an awesome deployment, and, we were able to make a difference there and make sure a lot more soldiers and Marines came home alive, because of the sniper missions that we were running. But, obviously we took some casualties. The first SEAL killed in Iraq, where Mark Lee was a machine gunner in Charlie Platoon, my platoon. I was his platoon commander, and amazing guy, incredible loss there. Ryan Job, another machine gunner in Charlie Platoon. One of my guys was shot in the face by an enemy sniper round, blinded in both eyes, and eventually 3 years later, died of those wounds. And after a complication from a surgery repair that his face. And then Mike Mansour in Delta Platoon, had dove on a grenade and to save the 2 SEALs on either side of him, and sacrificed himself, and was possibly awarded the Medal of Honor for that. So, those losses were horrific, man. And coming back, that was a tough burden to bear. It's a burden that never goes away, as you know. It's something that never goes away. It's never be a time when I go up to Fort Rosecrans Cemetery and stand at Mark Lee's grave and not think that it was, not just wish with everything in my being that it was me lying on the ground there, and not Mark. One of the things that we do at Echelon Front is talk about those guys and their legacies, and talk about Mark, talk about Ryan, talk about Mikey, and, pass on the lessons that we learned there, which is exactly what I did when I went and took over that leadership course, and to the next generation, of SEALs.
That's right. That's what I took, because when I got there, your name was still on all the PowerPoint presentations from that leadership course, and I went there near the end of my time. So I got there kind of on my way out in 2000, I want to say 14-ish, somewhere in there. But your name, what year were you there? Because your name was still on everything. No one had even updated the name. They were just using your stuff the whole time. There's nothing
awesome.
done to it.
That's great to hear, man. I figured it was long gone by then, but there's I left active duty in 2011. I ran that course in 2007 and 2008.
And going there at the end of my time, like I think about Najaf, I think about the time in Afghanistan right off the bat. I think about the time with the agency. I think about Ramadi. I think about those things. But really, my takeaway from when I look back at that entire 20 years, that couple months, those I think 3 or 4 classes that I did at the leadership training, what is it called? The leadership training course?
Junior officer training course.
Junior officer training course. That's it. JOTC. Yep. Between BUDS. And for those listening, it's you go to BUDS for 6 months. And that course is pretty much the same as it's been for years and years and years. But then you go to something called the SEAL qualification training. And that's another 6 months. And that's where you actually start to learn something rather than just showing that you're comfortable in the water, that you're tough, and that you're safe with explosives and firearms. You can start to learn things. But between those 2 courses, the officers get pulled out and they go to the junior officer training course. And looking back on that, God, what a great experience that was. Just a place for me to be able to give back whatever lessons that I'd learned over the previous 19 years. And to just, they're so impressionable at that time, those officers coming through. So it was probably the most impact I had on the SEAL teams was that few months of working with those officers as they went through, and then they classed back up with a new class and go through SEAL qualification training after that. But it was so cool to see your name on all those things, and then I got to add my flavor and some books and some reading lists and things like that, and then pass it off. And by the time I got there, we had this guy. I won't say his name because I don't think he's public about things, but he came over from Delta. So he came over from Delta Force, Sergeant Major, and he came in to add that Army leadership side of the house from the enlisted side, from working at the highest levels in Army Special Operations for most of his time in uniform. And gosh, I learned so much from that guy. It was incredible. And so those SEALs that are going through that course, to have that guy in there, who I think is still there, they should hold on to him forever, or as long as he'll continue to do it. But to see him interact with these students, and then for them to get that Army flavor, and then put them through the training, and then off they go, like that was pretty cool. But you did that. Was there a junior officer training course already in place when you got there?
And I'm not sure if you went through it, prior. In your pipeline. I had gone through 4 years prior to that, and there was a guy that was teaching it. He was a super nice guy, and he taught what he knew, just as any of us do. But he didn't have any real combat experience, So he was teaching people how to be a staff officer, and we got to learn how SOCOM was organized. But there wasn't, there wasn't these young junior officers that are going to be a squad leader, and just like me and you out there leading. I mean, on my first deployment, I got pulled out of the security detail mission to go up to Samara and lead a 12-man sniper team trying to protect the Army. That was Big Red 1, 1st Infantry Division. They were getting hit with a bunch of mines, getting put in the road. It was destroying their Humvees and messing up their Bradley fighting vehicles. And so we went up there to support them. And what I tried to do was just give them everything I wish someone had taught me before I went into a tough situation like that. And I love that perspective of others. I actually had a Green Beret officer that came on an exchange and worked with us. He'd been in 7th Special Forces Group, spent several deployments to Afghanistan, and had a bunch of experience. And so he provided a lot of great experience as well. And the first thing I did was, of course, bring Jocko in to talk to these young junior officers and pass on those lessons learned. I also brought a lot of enlisted guys in too, both junior enlisted guys, who were E5s, talking about what they loved in officers, what they didn't like in the bad officers they worked with, as well as the chiefs. And that perspective, I think, was super powerful. I learned so much there. Yeah. And in fact, other than, I always wanted to be a combat leader, as I said before, and I couldn't do that anymore. When I was getting out of the Navy, I couldn't be a combat leader anymore. I'd been promoted above that. But the one thing I like to do was teach leadership. I love that. I love those 2 years there. I think I put 137 officers through that training in the 2 years I was there. And that included some Air Force Crow officers that are going to be the PJ squadron commanders for the pararescuemen. And then we even put some Norwegian Jaegers through the course.
Oh, nice.
Joined us. They were outstanding. So I got to, I just got to pass that on, and I've kept in touch with a lot of those young junior officers, and it was really powerful, meaningful for me. And I love doing it. And so when I got out and left active duty, my wife asked me, "Hey, what do you like to do?" And this is what I thought about immediately, was teaching leadership. It was something that I had not foreseen that I would really like to do, but it was super powerful and meaningful for me. And that's pretty much what we do now with leaders all over the place.
Well, what was your plan then, as you're sitting there in the junior officer training course? And I know then you had one more assignment, I think, after that, and then got out from there. But what was your plan as you transitioned, like during that last 2 years in, as you're starting to think about this, and you're starting to think about this next step, and you're thinking about where you're going to go next, and what you're going to do? What were some of the things on the list, or what were you contemplating?
I didn't really know. I mean, people always ask me, was I going to stay in for a full career? And I always said I was going to stay until I stopped having fun. That was always my answer. And as I got promoted up the chain, I mean, you get further away from the guys that you like to be around and the things you like to do. I mean, my last tour, I went to SEAL Team 1 after the junior officer training course, because the commanding officer was going to take over there. Was probably the most outstanding officer. I think you worked with him at SEAL Team 7. I think he was your XO there. Okay. He just an amazing officer. And I mean, the finest senior officer you could ever ask for. And so he asked me to come be his operations officer. And I was like, you know what, I'll give it one more tour. Let's see if this is for me. And so I did that. I did the operations in the NAXO tour. We did one more deployment. And I worked with a great group of guys, and, we went to Iraq as things were kind of winding down, and we did a bunch of operations, and guys got after it. We sent a task unit to Afghanistan. It's pretty hard though. It's pretty hard as we were trying to get more guys into Afghanistan, which at the time, this is 2009 and 10, was really flaring up. I mean, Iraq had wound down. And I mean, just to put that in perspective for those listening, my 2006 deployment to Ramadi, Iraq, the 5,600 brigade combat team, 5,600 troops of the brigade combat team had 98 guys killed in action and over 500 wounded in just the city of Ramadi, just this small little area, just a few miles across. And in my next deployment in 2009 and 10, we went back to Ramadi. I was there for six months, same amount of time. We had one U.S. soldier killed in a vehicle rollover accident, all of Anbar province wide. So non-combat fatality, all of Anbar province wide. Now you're comparing just the city of Ramadi to the entire, province or state, which is the largest, province in Iraq. And so it just, the war had just wound down there. The Marines were leaving and departing and going to Afghanistan. And we were trying to get more people into Afghanistan. And I kept getting told over and over and over again, there's no demand signal for more troops in Afghanistan. No demand signal for more troops in Afghanistan. And you watch a video like Restrepo, which I don't know if you've seen Restrepo, the documentary. I mean, just those guys were, those guys are in the thick of the fight. I guarantee if you ask those troops on the ground getting shot at every day, if they'd like some SEAL sniper support from the high ground, they'd take it all day long and twice on Sundays. And yet we're being told there's no demand signal for more SEALs, and a lot of senior officers pushing back on that and not wanting us to be there. And it was, that to me was the least fun, particularly when I had a really good friend of mine who was severely wounded in Ramadi about a month after we left from SEAL Team 5. And so he spent a bunch of time at Brooke Army Medical Center with burns. And I got to go there, the Army's primary burn care facility, spent a lot of time with him and saw these young soldiers and Marines that were coming in there with these horrific injuries, burns on 90% of their bodies, like ears and faces gone, no hands, just horrible stuff. And then I got to do that at Pendleton with him. As every time I go up and see him, there's 6 Marines sitting in there that were, in Sangin or Marja, lost legs or limbs. And it was really tough to hear that, that here we are with a highly trained group of guys who's eager to go and get in that fight. And we can't do it. We're all sitting on the sidelines. So obviously there were SEALs that were there and did their best to support it. And my hat's off for those guys, but that was pretty frustrating for me. That was kind of the final straw of like, it's time for me to move on.
Okay. Yeah. So you saw that, what was ahead for you as far as a big bureaucracy, making those kind of decisions, when at the tactical level, what we're doing, we're a little more agile at that tactical level, making this, the enemy is even more agile than we are, I think, a lot of the times, because they have even a different kind of bureaucracy. But when you look at us, obviously adapting real time on the battlefield, looking for gaps, looking to capitalize on momentum, looking to adapt faster than the enemy. And then you look up and you see people at the operational level, and then you see people at the strategic level whose only responsibility is to understand the nature of the conflict in which they're engaged and make wise decisions based on that knowledge, saying that, hell yeah, we don't need SEALs in there, or we have this group over here that could help, but nah, we're just going to let these guys in the Army and the Marines here just take those shots in Afghanistan. That's got to be tough to see. And so that cemented your decision to move on and leave the military behind.
That was a driving force behind it. I mean, my wife was in New York at the time, and her job kept her there, and I wasn't going to be able to get close to that. We've been 2.5 years on opposite coast. I was stationed in San Diego. She was in New York City. So, so that was, and then the closest I was going to get was the Pentagon, and I had zero interest in going to the Pentagon.
The worst. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I never had to do that, luckily. But, so you're out now. So do you already know is Jocko out at this point?
I was at the 13-year mark, and I had a lot of senior officers, as right? When you're getting out in the SEAL teams, the worst thing somebody could call you is a quitter. So people are like, you're frustrated with things where you could get promoted, make a difference. And so, and then, the other thing people were telling me it was not a good business decision. I was throwing away a $500,000 401k, and there's definitely something to that for sure. But for me, look, you only get one life, man. And 7 years, to stick it out for something that, when I realized I wanted to do other things, it was time for me to move on. Definitely.
Yeah. No, I think that's it's an interesting thing when people talk about your time in uniform in terms of a career. And even the book, I weave this into the books as well, how it's the profession of arms, not the career of arms. And when people start talking to you about benefits, and even like in boot camp, I remember people talking to us about retirement. And you're like, with these 18-year-old kids, 19-year-old kids, and you're putting this retirement thing in their head at 18 years old, meaning they're thinking they're retiring at 38 if they stay in. And so they have this mindset that and I think from the very beginning it does them a disservice, because if they think of this in terms of a career and a retirement at age 38, like that retirement's not great at age 38. Like if you do your 20 years and you're an E7 and E8, maybe E9, and your whole life has had this word retirement, like precision in language reflects precision in thought. And if you've had retirement attached to 20 years forever, and all of a sudden you get out and you realize that, oh, it's just half of this base pay, which they sneak in there, and not all these other pays that you've been getting for all these other things you do in the military. And all of a sudden it's half of not just that, but just this little base pay thing over here. Like, maybe that's a retirement, maybe. But I just think if you do 20 years focused on that and using that word, I just think it does a disservice. Maybe I think using the words like, hey, here's some severance pay. Here's some transition money, to help you out as a thank you for your 20 years or whatever it is. But I just think when people focus on that word retirement and focus on that 20 years, and then they get out and they see that base pay cut in half, and then start getting taxed depending on where they live, like that dwindles down pretty quick. I don't think people set themselves up for success by focusing on this number. So anyway, I don't put much stock in that, in the military retirement thing. I just happened to be near that mark when I came to that realization when I got back from Iraq. Was like, okay, it was my last time I'm going to tactically maneuver guys on the battlefield as a task unit commander. Now what's ahead? Okay, time to get out. Time to move on. My family needs me, and I'm going to flip this page. I had a couple of years left, so took that breath, and I got to give back a little bit with that junior officer training course, which was just amazing, and then made that transition and had that. Luckily, I knew that passion that I wanted to write, and then my mission is taking care of my family, so I got to put those two together as I went on out the door. So I was very, very fortunate, but so I knew. So you didn't know exactly what you were going to do then. You just knew, hey, I'm not doing this anymore, and it's time to move on. But what did you? When did you come to the realization that that you're going to teach leadership? You're going to talk about leadership, and then you're going to partner up with Jocko, and you guys are going to go and do great things.
Well, Jocko and I were obviously very close. He was my immediate boss and task unit bruiser as my task unit commander, and I got a chance to spend a bunch of time with him as well. We were friends. We would surfing all the time together. We hung out all the time together, and that's the way me and Jocko, and then Seth, the Delta platoon commander, Seth Stone, was the same way, and we were all super tight and close and spent a lot of time together. And then when Jocko was the training detachment officer in charge, so he ran, training for all the West Coast SEAL teams and really focused that effort. And I love that dedication that you had in there in the terminal list to thanking Jocko for putting you through the, two great workup cycles. And
I learned so much from those. I learned so much. Obviously I weave them into the stories. But I learned so much. I even like this one right here, the Dichotomy of Leadership. Like I had those leadership principles printed out and I read them to the platoon. I also read that true believer quote, which I think comes from a Army Special Forces instructor. That's in the beginning of my book, True Believer, but I'd read that and I'd read these principles back before they were a book, obviously. But they were just so valuable. And those principles and just breaking them down the way that you guys have is, it's so beneficial for people in the military. They're going to get, be in these stressful situations, have people down, have to prioritize, have to execute, have to do all those sorts of things. But applying that to life, gosh, I do that all the time. I do that stuff every day.
Yeah, people are always blown away, and I'm sure you get the same thing, right? People are blown away to hear that the hardest part about combat leadership is not about maneuvering troops under fire, right? Or putting the tactical plan together. It's always about getting a group of people with their own perspectives and their own agendas and their own egos to work together as a team in order to accomplish a mission and win. And I think that's, obviously that applies everywhere. But I loved your true believer quote. That's a super powerful one. It's something that we always kind of thought about and lived by, and very similar theme to Jocko's final speech, at his retirement ceremony, where he talks about that and that we always have to remember that all the time. Actually, we use the term true believer. I'm sure you saw it there in Extreme Ownership. And what's interesting is it all, I think, goes toward the same place. But where I actually started using that term was because a good buddy of mine at SEAL Team 5 would use that term because he was a latchkey kid. He knew, and just like so many SEALs that you dropping movie quotes all the time, which I love. Have you captured those, in your characters and in your books? It's outstanding. It's so much. It's like, oh, I feel like I'm back in the teams, talking to everybody, and you're describing, going on the base and the compounds and everything. It was awesome. But he would quote, he was quoting, I can't remember what's the bad guy's name from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
The Temple of Doom. Oh, I forget. But I forget. Yeah.
The guys, he's like giving them the blood.
That's the scary one. That's the scary one.
And then so he says, "You will, Dr. Jones, you will become a true believer." Oh, nice. And so he used to say that all the time. So that's why that's how we
fantastic. Oh, I love it. Yeah, no, I love weaving some of those movie quotes in there. I'm a child of the 80s, so I weave some of those things in there, drop them for people that are, in the know. So, and that's, people talk to me about that all the time. They reach out and say how fun it is to find those little things in there. I really enjoy weaving those in. But yeah, when you guys decide, you get out and bam, #1 New York Times bestseller. So did you guys start the company first and start doing things?
It was far from bam, #1 New York Times bestseller. I mean, it was so just to tell you how that happened, it was I was on the verge of going back to school, and I'd looked at that when I was teaching the junior officer training course. I'd looked at getting an MBA and I was thinking about that. Most people get out, particularly from the officer community, and a lot of enlisted SEALs as well, or you get out, you go back to school. It's a good transition. And so I thought, you know what, maybe a law degree would be interesting. Maybe I'm not sure I want to be a lawyer, but maybe I'll just get a law degree. Seems like that could be a good thing. And so I had applied to school, and my grades in the academy weren't great. So I had some people pull some strings for me and help me out. I was accepted at Fordham Law School in New York City. So my wife and I got married in 2011. And so I moved I got out. I left the Navy. My final day was June 30th, 2011. We got married July 3rd. And then then I moved to New York City as soon as we came back from our honeymoon, which is a big transition from San Diego, small town, East Texas, 12 years in San Diego, California. And then I'm living in Manhattan. So it was, but it was an awesome experience, for me, for sure. But as I did a couple of weeks of like the academic enrichment program at Fordham Law School there. And it was, I realized like, I don't know if this thing is for me. And frankly, our very close mutual friend, who I won't name because he's still serving, called me to tell me about Extortion 17. And a really close mutual friend of ours who had been at my wedding 1 month prior to that was on that thing. And just another reminder, along with multiple guys that I'd served with, and another guy I went to buds with and people I knew well, just as I'm sure you did. That's largest loss of life and the SEAL teams. It's just such a horrific incident when that helicopter was shot down. And it was just another reminder of so many that I've had in my life of like, look, life is short. You only get one shot of this. You got to do what you like. And I had some good friends who had introduced me to some people who become very close friends of mine, very successful business people that were working in New York who really asked me like, hey, do you really want to be a lawyer? Is this what you want to do? And so all those things kind of came together to realize, hey, this isn't for me. I don't want to do that. And so then it was like, well, man, now what I want to do. I was sitting there I was sitting there in a little outdoor cafe in Manhattan with my wife. And she asked me, my wife, Jenna, was like, hey, what is it you like to do? What do you like to do? And so I thought about that. And I thought, I love teaching leadership. I love teaching that junior officer training course. Mm-hmm. And she said, you should call Jocko and start a leadership company. I picked up the phone. I called him and I said, let's do it. So, we kind of just made a pact right there. We're going to do it. We kind of went round and round about the name. Took a while to come to Echelon Front. We started with all kinds of everything from like Viking names to everything was warlike, obviously.
Yeah.
But what's crazy about this, Jack, is I thought that it was my idea. I was like, I called Jocko and I planted the seed. One of the things we talk about leadership, right, is like, is if you can, leading up the chain of command, getting other people to do things like leadership, right? You're influencing people. And when people think something is their idea, like that's the best thing
that's
of all.
It.
About a year or two into Echelon Front, after we launched the company, I start recalling a conversation that I had as Jocko was packing out of his office at TRADET. He was the TRADET. So he's there at the training detachment. He's there on the third floor office of what was the Mark Lee Training Center, building, named after Mark Lee. And it was, I was up there talking to him, and I recall the conversation that we had where he said, "Hey, what's it going to take? What's it going to take to give you on board to start a leadership company?" No and I threw out some number that I thought was gigantic at the time. It doesn't seem so big now, but, and he just kind of nodded, as Jocko does. He kind of nodded like this. And that was the end of the conversation. And I realized, man, that son of a gun planted the seed. and this whole thing was his idea. And here I am thinking it was mine.
That's perfect. Masterful. Masterfully done.
It was absolutely masterful, as everything that Jocko generally does is. And we haven't looked back since. We started working with companies. Initially, I think my first year out of the Navy, I made less than half of my Navy paycheck. I was wondering, hey, is this ever going to pay the bills? And we had a lot of people, we knew that we were passing on important leadership lessons learned. We were kind of doing the same that we done in the SEAL teams, just talking about trying to get a team, analyzing all the mistakes that we made and trying to learn from those mistakes and then implement solutions so that other people wouldn't make those same mistakes. And so we had people ask us over and over again, "Hey, can you write a reference manual?" I eventually put a workbook together. It was like it was just a Word document. I'd go down to the local FedEx office store, right there next to Fox News nice. In their building and print out copies of that. And we'd ship it to clients that we were working with. And so eventually there was enough demand signal there that we thought, okay, we should write this. We should write a book. And so we wrote a book proposal. We put it together. I floated it by a good friend of mine was connected with a very high powered literary agent. And we showed it to her. She said, "Yeah, I don't think so. Really? This isn't good enough. You need to get an author to write this thing. And you guys should give it 2 or 3 more years and come back and try again." So, we eventually found a literary agent that would help us out. And so we put together an official book proposal. We floated it to, she floated to really every major publisher. And the first 5 major publishers that we sent it to said, "Nope, no thanks. Really? Don't like it." Insisted that, they had already gone with another SEAL book, or they insisted that we would have to have a ghostwriter or, an author to write the book. They didn't think we were capable of doing that. And we just thought, man, we're not going to do that. We're going to write this thing ourselves. And, awesome. And so eventually we got to St. Martin's Press, and their president, Sally Richardson, who is an amazing lady, and their team there, was like, this is, they liked it, and they were willing to invest. We got paid nothing for our advance was, it was just, it was absolute minimal. I think the first printing of that thing was, it might've been 5,000 copies, okay. Maybe 10,000 copies total. Yeah. So, and so we had a lot of people in powerful places who, Roger Ailes at Fox News, who first and foremost, was the CEO and chairman there, who someone I was close with, who was, despite what you see in the news, was an incredible patriot and someone who really believed in what we talk about and so wanted to promote that and wanted to get the message out there, and gave us a massive rollout. Don Imus, from Imus in the Morning program, was a huge fan of what we did and put that out there. And so we had a lot of great people who really promoted the book and got the message out, in a huge way. And it's, what's awesome is that it's continued, extreme ownership has continued to, people still, people are still buying it, still passing it on, buying, 10 copies for their team at work, or 3 copies for their friends and family, and continue to pass that message on. So, I buy it for people. Awesome and very humbling to see. Yeah.
No, when I get it for people, I pass it along, but I see the ranking on there. I'm like, how long has this book been out? And how long has it had this crazy, 1-digit ranking on Amazon and all these categories? So it's cool to see that, all these years later, to see it still there as a top book. There's continues to be demand for all of this stuff. And then you guys came back and did this one, bam. So I love that. All these things just so valuable.
Dichotomy leadership is, I reference that even more than extreme ownership. And not as many people know about it. We obviously did a poor job of marketing it and getting the message out. Because I probably, for 1 out of 3 people will ask me, when we're writing a follow-on book to extreme ownership, they don't even know it's out there. So clearly we didn't do a great job of getting the message out about it. but we tried to write that to answer the dilemmas that we see so many good leaders that are trying to implement the principles we talk about and yet are struggling, to find balance and they're step in charge. They're making things happen, but they're not being a good follower. They're not actually taking orders from their boss. They're not actually supporting the team. They're not actually willing to listen to others, who may have a better idea. I mean, just those sort of things. Or people that are default aggressive and want to go make things happen, but they get too aggressive, and they're not mitigating the risk they can control. And they're, or they're humble and but they become passive, where they're not actually taking a stand for the things that actually matter and pushing back against a direction that they think might be harmful for the team or the mission, those sort of things. So I reference that book a ton, and it's been great to see the feedback from it from leaders.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they're both extremely valuable. But this one also, I mean, maybe that's because I have that connection to it because I had the actual list that Jocko sent me, and I printed it out and then made copies, handed it to the platoon, posted it in the platoon space, talked about it, not just once, but keep going back to it, which I think is important, incorporated into the training that Jocko wasn't running at the time. If it was advanced training later on after we left his pipeline prior to deployment, keep bringing those principles up. So I think that's why I have such a connection to this book right here. Is because of that. Cause I felt like, this is your guys' experience, and I had these lessons and Jocko passed them on to me going through those two workups. So valuable. And then on my own, I had those principles that are now expounded upon in this. So I think that's why I have that connection to this. But you guys did obviously a fantastic job on all of it. And before you go, I know we're getting over time, but going to like Gettysburg, when you guys go and do those and do the musters and those sorts of things, for people that aren't familiar with the muster, can you cover what that is really quickly? And then also talk about Gettysburg. And have you done them other places as well? Did you go to like Little Bighorn or something like that? Or is it just?
We did just a kind of a pre-deployment site survey for Little Bighorn as well. And obviously, units do staff rides there, military units, and the park services and, federal agencies go to places like that. And, so first of all, muster is extreme ownership muster, we call it, which is a muster is just a gathering of the troops for inspection or to prepare for war. We love that term. It's a common term that obviously is familiar to anybody in the military. But the extreme ownership muster is leaders from all over the place. We get people from, it'll be, 40, 45 states represented in the United States and multiple, usually a dozen countries around the world will come to this thing. It's a 2-day leadership conference, and it's just the most awesome group of people. If you think about, the top 2 or 3 SEALs that you served with in any SEAL platoon, like the 2 or 3 like best people, that's who comes to these things. These are people that are humble. This is not a feel-good seminar. This is a chance to really look hard in the mirror to say, okay, what am I screwing up? How can I get better? How can I improve? And it's awesome. We did our first one in San Diego back in 2016. And actually it was 10 years to the day that Jocko and I actually arrived back in country from that deployment to Ramadi with Tasking and Bruiser. And we didn't know if 50 people were going to show up. And we ended up having about 350 people there. And so we did a 4:45 workout in the morning. Our PTs in the morning. I didn't know if 50 or 100 people would show up of the 350 people. And we had, I bet 90% of the people showed up. It was awesome. So it's a great group of people. I love, engaging with these leaders and we get, first responders and military folks and startups and mid-level managers from major corporations to all the way to senior executives. We've had NFL, GMs there and it's all kinds of folks. It's a really interesting group of people. And what you really see is that all people's problems are kind of the same. It's all the same. And it doesn't matter where you are. You could be a captain in a firehouse, or you could be, leading a startup with 10 or 12 people, or you could be the senior executive in a major corporation with thousands and thousands of people. And you got the same problems, all the same problems. So, and there are solutions to those problems. Ultimately, every problem is a leadership problem. So that's what we do is we talk about those things. And then, for the battlefield, that's something we just started. We did our first one back in the fall of last year. And I'd been to Gettysburg when I was a kid. My dad's a massive Civil War buff. We'd walked Pickett's Charge from from Seminary Ridge all the way up to the copse of trees there on Cemetery Ridge. And so, I'd been to I was a member of the Naval Academy History Club. So we'd go to Antietam and we'd go to Manassas and we'd visit all these battlefields with historians. But it's very interesting, you know, and I don't know how much time you spent on battlefields, Jack, going back after your combat experience, because I always read history as, you know the outcome. And I always, you kind of think, well, why did that person make this decision, or that wasn't smart, or, but yet now that you've been a combat leader, you realize like these people didn't know the outcome. They didn't know how this was going to go, and they wouldn't have made those decisions if they knew exactly how it was going to go, if it went badly for their side. So it's a very interesting perspective. And we talk about detachment as one of the most important things you can do as a leader. When you're down in the details of stuff, it's really hard to see what's the strategic priority. So in order to properly prioritize and execute, you have to detach. You have to take a step back. And so Gettysburg, with 158 years of detachment, that you can really evaluate the leaders and the information that they had and the decisions that they made and the communications that they gave each other. And there's so much documentation around that battle. Mm-hmm. And what's very interesting about Gettysburg is something I learned stuff every time I've gone. This was my, so we've done 3 of those now. Okay. And I learned something every single time. Yeah, and the debriefs are always different, slightly different, even though you're kind of talking about the same principles. We're talking about laws of combat. We're talking about extreme ownership. And, this is the last, when Jocko was standing up there on top of a Cemetery Ridge, and we were talking about Longstreet and Lee, in the Army of Northern Virginia, and this conflict. Longstreet pushed back as hard as you could possibly push back against the order for Pickett's charge to assault that position. I mean, to paraphrase his comments to Lee were, I've been a soldier all my life, at every level. And no 15,000 men ever arrayed for battle can take that position. Wow. And Lee said, do it anyway. Wow. And so he did it. He did it, and they carried it out the order because that was the trust and love that they had for their commander. And something that Jocko was talking about is he kind of looked at me as he was saying that to say, hey, if Leif is telling me not to do that and I tell him to do it anyway, what's he doing? He's charging. And I just look back at him with some tears in my eyes, like, man, I'm going all day long, every time. Because that's the love and trust that I have for you and for the guys that we serve with. And I think, so Jocko was looking at that as like, listen, when your people are telling you that maybe this isn't the best idea, you got to have enough trust in them to listen to them and to take that feedback, and so that you can get aligned and so that your team can move together. And those are the kind of powerful lessons that come out of that. It's just, it's amazing. And that battlefield is such hollowed ground. Yeah. It's a powerful, there's 1,200 Confederates still on that battlefield, buried somewhere in unmarked graves. There's 3,500 Union soldiers, only about 50% of which were identified, after the battle, that are buried there in the cemetery. And it's just, it's an unbelievable experience. And the lessons learned are just incredibly powerful. Oh, it's you got to come join us sometime.
I would love to do that. It's, I was there as a kid, and I remember that. I read, of course, Killer Angels later, which is an incredible book for those who have not read it. Highly recommend reading that probably before you go to that battlefield. But I'd love to go do that with you guys. I would love to walk that ground with you. And then I was trying to actually, as I was leaving the junior officer training course, I was trying to set up that trip to do Gettysburg, to do a staff ride, go out there and do that, and then go also Little Bighorn and do that as part of one in the fall, one in the spring, or something like that. But incorporate those into the pipeline as well. But I don't think it ever. By the time I got out, I didn't get a chance to finish it. I don't think they do it. Maybe they do. I'm not sure. But that would be incredible to walk it with those officers, I think. But looking back, having been in Afghanistan, been in Iraq, to go walk that ground, I think that would be incredible. So I would love to do that with you one day. That'd be amazing.
You're welcome anytime, brother. Anytime, man. We'd love to have you. Speaking of Killer Angels, I think that's that's what's so cool about the books that you've read. Is that it would be like reading the Killer Angels if you had an officer serving in the Union or Confederate Army. They're writing that from that perspective in the language that they use, talking about some of the details of the things. That's what's so cool, man. I'm not even a fiction reader. I very rarely read fiction, and the Terminalist is one of the first fiction books I've read in a while since I reread the Killer Angels prior to going back. But it's awesome, man. I love that. And I love that. It's just a great insight into these military units and how we talk and how we think and the weapons that we use and all that stuff. And I love that piece. And in fact, I know you could take our mutual friend Jocko to task for that, because I usually get tightened up, particularly in our books, for writing all these details about the calibers of weapons. And I'm interested in all that stuff. So it's like, finally, somebody gets it.
Nice.
Jack's doing this, man. This is awesome.
I'll let them know for sure.
Jack was like, no one cares about the caliber, man. It doesn't matter.
There's some, it might be a slim group, but to those slim people, they're very passionate about you getting that right, you know? But yeah, that's I love the historical fiction, especially when I'm recommending books to people in junior high or high school, because I get those questions all the time. And I usually recommend some sort of historical type fiction. So Killer Angels or The Winds of War, War and Remembrance, about lead up to World War II and then through World War II by Herman Wouk, or Once an Eagle by Anton Meyer. Like, those are the ones that I recommend to people because they have a touch point with history. It's not just made up. Hey, I have a touch point in history. It's humanizing it in most cases. And they're learning about history, and they're learning that respect for people who, from the inception of this country up till today, sacrificed everything so that we could have the options, opportunities, and freedoms that we do. So I think historical fiction is a really good way to introduce that age group from, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade through high school, even into college and beyond if they haven't visited it earlier, but as a way to introduce them to history in a way that kind of garners some respect for those people who laid it all on the line for us today so we could do what we do. But dude, brother, we're over an hour, and I know you got things to do, and man, I am so honored that you took the time to do this, because I know you have 1,000 things going on, and so it means so much to me that you take time out of your day to catch up. Sincerely appreciate it. And what's next for you,
here, Jack? I know you're busy, man. You got a lot going on as well, so it's awesome to see you, and I'm so glad. I've been wanting to call you in person. I know with the book launch. Publication week, there's so much going on, but man, congratulations on all your success. To see Savage Son hit number one New York Times bestseller
for Devil's Hand. Yeah. Number one up there. Crazy.
Or Devil's Hand. Crazy. I'm sorry. Yeah. Devil's Hand. That is amazing. And that is having tread down that path, that is, Dichotomy didn't quite get to we got to number 2.
Oh man, so close. Yeah.
There. But dude, that is, for Devil's Hand to make that is outstanding. And man, you just so proud of the great success that you've achieved. And not only that, but how you carry yourself as an ambassador for the SEAL teams. And that's something that everyone I talk to, I think, is deeply appreciative of that. We all know there's knuckleheads out there that don't represent the SEAL teams well. And I think as one of my old commanding officers says, we need some great ex-team guys out there. And you're absolutely one of those as a great ambassador for the teams, man, and represent. So really proud of your success. It's honor to be on here with you. Definitely.
Oh, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. And then for you, next is more Echelon Front, charging forward on that. Do you have anything else in the works, or another book, or what's the future hold for you?
I'm sure we'll write another book at some point. But I think more than anything, we're trying to just get the message out to leaders about what we do. We just created an online leadership training program. I think
saw that.
2020 really just locked us down from doing in-person events. And we realized, wow, you can put together a pretty effective training program online. So we spent a ton of time,
nice.
Shooting these courses that are interactive videos, and there's a learning check questions and application exercises that match each chapter of the book, Extreme Ownership. And then we're going to do the same thing for Dichotomy Leadership. We'll do the same thing for, Jocko's Leadership Strategy and Tactics and others. And it's been awesome. I mean, just the amount of leaders that I think we have 60 countries represented on that online training program right now.
Amazing. For
EF Online, which eventually will be the Extreme Ownership Academy, is what we're about to rebrand that.
Love
it. Very excited about it. And, I think for us, it's just trying to reach as many leaders as we can, and try to help them be better, better people, better leaders in every aspect, not only in their business or organization they're a part of, but as spouses, as fathers and mothers and husbands and wives, in every aspect of themselves. I think if you can take and implement, the principle of extreme ownership and stop blaming other people and making excuses, everything gets better.
Oh, it's so powerful, personally and professionally. If people do that, they would lead much more productive and happy lives, being able to articulate it, acknowledge, and move forward. So love what you're doing out there. And it's echelonfront.com for the Echelon Front side of the house. Is that right?
Echelonfront.com.
And then where can they find you? Are you you're on the social channels, Leif Babin out there?
The interwebs. Yeah, I'm on at Leif Babin on Twitter, Facebook, and then at Real Leif Babin on Instagram.
Nice.
LinkedIn, Leif Babin as well. So
awesome. Good deal, brother. But dude, thank you for all that you do. And thank you for honoring those guys who didn't make it home by passing on those lessons to these next generations. So thank you for that. And man, hopefully we can meet up in person here soon. Hopefully maybe on the battlefield at Gettysburg.
Love to do it, man. Anytime.
Awesome, all right. You take care. Thanks for everything.
Thanks, Jack.
Welcome to the gear highlights section of the Danger Close podcast. Today, I want to talk about New West KnifeWorks. So I think I found out about New West KnifeWorks when I was in Jackson, Wyoming, a few years back, and just love their stuff. They do some amazing work out there. I use this blade like every day. They do a bunch of kitchen type knives. This is a great fillet knife that they do. They're in Jackson Hole. They're in St. Helena, California, and here in Park City, Utah. So they do a lot of cool things. And if you're stopping through any of those towns, highly recommend you track them down. Do utensils like this. They do really cool steak knives like that, different colors. There's a whole set right here. But the reason I wanted to talk about them today is because Leif and I on the podcast just talked about Gettysburg. And where's Gettysburg? It's in Pennsylvania. And in the 1800s, what was something Pennsylvania was really known for? Steel. So I get a lot of questions about what's behind me on this wall. And these are from New West KnifeWorks as well. They take old steel from the 1800s, pretty much from Pennsylvania, and they refurbish them and turn them into these just works of art that you can also use. But you can look up the names, the companies that are on these things, and you can go back and look at look at the history of those companies. There's a cleaver, and on my blog section of my website, you can see how I use this on the Thanksgiving turkey. And I wouldn't be surprised if I use something like this in a future novel, because look at that thing. Dang. That is serious. But once again, it has the name of the company, and this is American Refurbished Steel from the 1800s. And then this guy right here, this is a hog splitter. So right there, look at that thing. Yeah, that's probably going to get used in a future novel right there. But once again, right here, golden age of American steel, Pennsylvania, right there. New West KnifeWorks. They take these and they refurbish them so that you can keep them and remember that history and use them. So you can check out that. I think it was from right around Thanksgiving where I did a blog on using that on the turkey. So yeah, check them out. New West KnifeWorks do some awesome stuff. Thank you for tuning into the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Sig Sauer. If you like what you heard today, be sure and leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're interested in more information on Leif, on Jocko, on Echelon Front, on those musters that we talked about, on the battlefield visits at Gettysburg and possibly Little Bighorn in the future, then be sure and check out echelonfront.com. Take care, and I'll see you next time on Danger Close.